Welcome back to No Boring Stories podcast. I, of course, am Alex Street, and I am joined today by a one of the people that I just feel like I get such pure, authentic vibes from every single time that we talk. And that is certainly not an overstatement. That is as honest and true as I could be about you, Jess. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you and to have you in this space. How are you on this day?
I'm so good, Alex. Thank you so much. And thank you for your kind words. It means the
Mm-hmm.
world.
We met a couple years ago, I guess, in a mastermind with Chris and Lori Harder. And let's just get into it. You were one of the people. And I've told my story before that I went into that space and I felt like a child. I had no business idea. I spent my morning on a scooter going around Hollywood and showed up with a sweaty t-shirt with my backpack. And to set the table, you were one of the people that I had in my mind that, like, I think you were wearing, you're wearing a hat and just to the nines. And I come from Canada, and like, we don't wear hats up here. We're in LA. I make a big deal of hats for some reason. You were one of the people that I looked at and was like, my goodness, like out of my level, like this, where do I don't belong here. Just the way that you commanded yourself and commanded conversations within the first few minutes that I was watching and kind of getting a survey of the room. Do you remember that first meetup
I do.
moment?
I do.
And how did you carry yourself in that space? Because I want to match these
Yeah.
stories together and see,
Isn't
what
it
they mean.
funny? Like the stories that we create. And I'm
Yeah.
so grateful. I had just said to you before we hit record, I asked if this was going to be recorded on video because I'm in like a sweatshirt with my hair and a messy ponytail and no makeup
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
So I love the duality of that. And it's so funny, these stories we create, because I felt exactly how you felt. And it was, do I belong here? Do I have anything to
Mm-hmm.
offer? Will I fit in? That mastermind in particular was not my first mastermind. It was probably like my fourth. And so
Mm-hmm.
just wondering, is this the one? Is this the
Mm-hmm.
one that I'm going to have value to add? Is this the one where I'm going to fit in? Is this the one where I'm going to feel seen? And so I felt exactly the same way you did. I just was wearing a hat.
That's the difference right
Yeah.
there. And it's just the level of confidence that brings, right? That's why I'm wearing a hat today. That's really what it is. I just needed to be more confident showing up for you. So how does that, how has that changed now as you show up into any given room? Are there rooms that you feel now that you show up into and you still feel that way? Or
100%. Yeah. And here's the thing. I don't know that there will ever be a room that I show up in that I don't feel that way. And if there
Mhm.
is a time that I walk into a room and I don't feel questioning myself, then I probably would ask myself, is this the right room? Because for me, the intention of getting in those rooms is to stretch myself and to get to my edge. And so there's
Yeah.
kind of that quote of, you don't want to be the smartest person in the room. And while your ego loves being the smartest person in the room and it feels really good, is that the right room to stretch you? And I think there's a time and a place for both types of rooms. But when
Mhm.
I'm looking for a mastermind, I'm looking to get really stretched.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
because you do so much work of leading those kind of rooms yourself. And
Mhm.
in those spaces, tell me how you feel when you're showing up and leading a room of people.
Yeah, I love this question. Jess 5 years ago would probably say, I feel like a leader. And I
Mm.
feel not that I'm the smartest person, but that I have so much value and my ego loves it and I can help so many people. And the
Yeah.
version of me now says, I still feel the same way, where I have as much to add as everyone else in the room. I have as much to learn as everybody else in the room. There are occasions where certain experiences, maybe I have more lived experience, more times that I've tried something. But at the end of the day, when I'm in a room, whether I'm facilitating it or I'm in it as a consumer,
Yeah.
every single person in there has something to add. Everybody's an expert at something. And if you're open and willing to receive, if you're open and willing to learn, then you'll get out of it exactly what you need and you'll get out of it what you ask for. So even when I'm quote unquote leading a container,
Yeah.
I still ask myself, what's the intention for me on each of my calls and what can I receive from this as well as what can I give?
It's so interesting to me as you say that, because I just got this really clear picture of the story that we think that we want to tell is I went from loser to leader,
Mhm.
and so 5 years ago, Jess would be like, look how I've grown. look at this. I now feel like a leader in every room that I go into, in every room that I lead. But since then, you've had this like extension of growth. Your story has continued, obviously, and it's gone from, no, that wasn't the height. Actually, I feel like right now I'm in a more pure and authentic place. I feel better than ever. I feel like a stronger leader than ever. And in doing so, I'm actually like lifting others up instead
Yeah.
of being the one at the front. Like I'm trying to put others at the front, give them the microphone, let
Yeah.
them step up. And that's actually like a further growth. That's
Yeah.
further in the story than where we think maybe we are striving to be.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting if I can share. So you're a storyteller. I was a teacher. And so I
Mhm.
love metaphors, I love analogies, and I just love visualization. So if I can share
Yeah.
this visual real quick of how I see leadership now, the way that I look at leadership is sort of we're all crossing this river, and the river is your entire life. And the only time that you get to the other edge, the bed of the river, is actually when you're no longer here. And so we're all rushing to get to the edge when in reality, the journey, the adventures are happening within the river. But what we do is we step on different rocks as we go across the river. And
Mhm.
sometimes those rocks are slippery and covered with green algae. And sometimes you step on it and it's a little bit shaky and your foot slips off. And sometimes we actually find like a tree branch that's fallen over and you can actually walk 10 feet across the river. So when I look at leadership, I look at it in this way of I'm not ahead of you as a leader. I'm in the
Mhm.
river with you. And my only job is to say, hey, look out, this rock is really slippery. Or, yo, come over here to your right because this rock is really big and there's like 8 of us that can fit here and we can just chill
Yeah.
for a minute. And I still have to look back over my right shoulder and my left shoulder to see what's going on behind me because, as we all know, sometimes you actually have to go backwards to go forwards.
Yeah.
And so I'm not ahead of anybody. I'm in the river. And so when I'm or I'm facilitating creating a container, I'm just in the river with you and we're all going across together shouting out who's got a flashlight, who's got a sandwich, right?
I'm interested in the sandwich.
Yeah.
That uh it's so beautiful. I get this immediate image. I mean, it actually took me back. You took me back right then to playing in a river with my brother. And like we would catch little like crayfish and stuff. We go down, we put on our rubber boots, or sometimes we just rip those off because they got soaked anyways. And we're both in there getting muddy and wet and cold and falling in and
Yeah.
pushing each other in and playing. And
Hmm.
the goal was to simply be and to be there together.
Right.
That's what mattered.
Yeah. And if one of you
So,
slips, you just pick the other person up, right? It's not that big of a deal.
well, yeah, unless he's your little brother and then you kick water on him more, but that's fine. but it, but that's stories for another day. Um, okay, so where you're at now, are you okay? Are we good?
Okay. Sorry. He came in like on speakerphone. Can you hear him?
Yeah, a little bit. But if we're talking, then what you could mute until,
Whenever I'm talking. Yeah.
yeah, we could try that
Sorry.
because I don't think that I could hear him over you.
Okay. Sure.
Sure, there we go. Okay, so with where you're at right now, sure, you're going through the river and you've had this, you've grown from leader to where you are. Like I'm just so excited to see what this growth process has been and why that has been the path. Ultimately, what is the river that you're leading people through right now? Like where are we headed towards? And so for you right now, what you've got all these different programs and all these different ways that you're helping people. Um, Tell me a little bit. I mean, what is it that you do, and what's the deep impact that you're really interested in making these days?
The most potent question at the perfect time. This is a question
Yes.
I've been asking myself for a while. So, what I do is I mentor people to build businesses.
Mhm.
And I've been doing that for a couple of years. We have a bunch of different ways that people can work with myself and our team that we have. And we help you build your business from the ground up. And we think of it like a puzzle with lots of puzzle pieces. So everything from accounting to legal to the mindset work to the strategy of the business. We're focused mostly on online businesses, and we really specialize in course creation.
Yeah.
So that's what we do. In terms of the impact that we make, everything that we do comes back to impact. So when I left my job as a teacher, I committed to always being involved in education. And so now what I'm doing is I'm really educating people online. And in addition to the education that I provide online, we also work with schools across the globe, actually,
Yeah.
in Africa, which is really, really cool. But what our job is, what my vision is, what my impact is helping you take what's in your brain, your lived experience, the things that you just know that you don't even realize you know, extract them and turn them into education for other people so that you can teach what you are good at. You can teach what you know to make a bigger impact.
So you've got such a reach out here. Like, it's so important and so incredible. Again, do you need to?
He's just like going in and out. I'm sorry. This is
okay.
brutal. This was an unplanned construction that we didn't know about.
Don't worry about it. I'm okay with this.
And Mike is away.
Totally
so
okay.
There's no one with the dog. The guy's going in and out.
And that's it. So I want to make sure that this is it's ultimately that this lifts you up in the best way possible and is the smoothest conversation. So would it be better to find another spot, find another time? What do you think?
Probably, just so it doesn't keep happening. I feel terrible because I don't take your time lightly. And another truck just pulled up too. So I'm just like, this is not ideal.
So, there's not other, like, I don't know what basement is like or anything like that. And if another location would be better, then I don't know. But, what's best for you then if we jumped and found another time, do you want to, is that an easy thing to do, or are you?
Yeah, I can try to sit outside. That would be the only other thing. I don't know how loud it'll be. They're in the house. Well, they'll be in the house. So I can try to sit outside. I can't sit in any of the bedrooms because they're on both ends of the house.
Yeah. Will Montana be okay if you're outside?
I'll make him go outside with me, so then he'll get out of their way too.
What do you think? You want to try it?
I'm down to try if you're okay with it.
Yeah, sure. Birds tweeting is better than contractor speaking,
Montana, come. I've never even sat outside.
Oh.
We've only been here for 2 days. We haven't even moved in. Life is just literally insane. Okay. Let's see if we do this.
The joy of it. This is a new experience maybe for both of us. There we go.
Seriously. Just look at that background. Okay. All right.
You good?
You need to breathe? No, I'm good. I feel terrible.
Oh, well, that's what I mean. So let's get that out, because I'm not thinking that. So I'm not thinking anything. There's zero negativity right here. I just want to make it work. So, okay. So where were we? You were making impact. Brilliant. So you've got all these different ways that you're making impact locally, across the country, across the globe. It's incredible. There's all these ways that you are helping others to find the thing that maybe they don't see is inside them, and then speak it out and educate others. Here's where we zone in a little bit more on that. If you help me do that, or help, someone else do that, then what? So what? So if I learn something new about myself, and then I go start teaching others that, so what does that do for me? Yeah. What's the impact there? Yeah. That's the action, but what does that make me feel?
Yeah, well, I think it's different for everybody. I think most people, what we lean into is purpose. And there's this misconception, this is my belief and a listener could borrow it, but there's a misconception that we build our businesses based on passion. When
Mm-hmm.
in reality, I believe that we should be building our business on purpose or fulfillment, because passion, the definition of passion is ever changing emotion. It's constantly changing, and it's
Yeah.
uncontrollable emotion. For me, I'm like, I don't want to build on passion, which is ever changing, but rather purpose. So when you ask, what does the impact make on you? It will most likely lean into your purpose and make you feel fulfilled and make you feel purposeful in your life. But then it also creates the ripple effect. So if you're teaching people how to navigate grief, which is maybe something that you've gone through, now you're
Mm-hmm.
helping them in their grief journey. If you're teaching people how to lose weight because you're a trainer, been through an experience where you've lost a ton of weight and changed your life, well, now they're bringing those habits into their home, and the ripple effect happens where maybe now they're even changing the way that they cook for their family, and then their children are picking up on these habits and it's changing their life. So generationally things are getting passed down.
Yes. So this is what's so interesting to me, because that goes, yeah, okay. So you got like I can help you pull something out of you and teach it to others. Fabulous. But this is what I know you to be. This is what I see you are. This is how I see you show up. And what I've heard from you in conversations as well is this: it's beyond the individual. It's beyond the one person. It's beyond the you. It's because if you do this, it unlocks something within you. You just said, right? It's not just about like, what am I passionate about? What am I going to do this week? Like, what feels good? What are other people doing? Where's success? And I'm going to lean into that. You're like, no. When you do this thing and you see how it impacts somebody, now you're living for purpose. And that purpose is this ongoing path. So for you, this idea of purpose, of feeling purposeful, take me back to the beginning. Where does that begin for you? Like, where do you see, is this who you were as a kid? Were you this person who was like, I got these big dreams. I know where I'm going to go. I see the path laid in front of me. This is my purpose. Did you have adults speaking that over you? Did you see somebody who really lived by that? What's the first kind of memory or locked in moment that comes to mind when you think of purpose in your life?
No one has asked me this question in this frame before. So it's really interesting. I've been asked about entrepreneurship or
Mm-hmm.
specifically kind of the skills that I have or that I use. In terms of purpose, when I think back, I've always been a leader and I've always loved teaching people. So when a lot of young girls were playing with dolls, I was doing school, like I'd play school, and
Right.
I was always the captain of every single team, and I was on, every board of whatever in school growing up. And I've just always loved teaching people and
Yeah.
guiding people and helping them see whether it's their greatness or what's possible for them. And when I think back to kind of purpose, creating, what's coming up is like creating something out of nothing. And so I can think back to a memory of, gosh, when I was 5, my mom is an artist. And so growing up, we were always doing arts and crafts. And when
Yeah.
I was 5, she had me taking pom poms, they're kind of like cotton balls, and
Yeah.
gluing them onto spray can tops and making like little pom pom people. And we used to take film containers back in the day, regular like
Yeah.
35
Yeah.
millimeter film, and I would punch
My
holes in
dad
the
was a
top.
photographer, right? I had those
Really?
all over the
Yeah.
house. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would punch holes in the top and put a pipe cleaner, and then I would draw on the actual film canister. And what it was a coin purse that would hang from a chain so that I could put quarters if I needed to make a phone call. And it got to a point where I then started selling this type of stuff, and I would paint hair clips with nail polish and sell them to my gymnastics teammates. And so
Yeah.
those memories come up with like entrepreneurship and creating
Sure. Yeah.
money. But what's coming up for me is that concept of repurposing and creating something out of nothing, which is something we did
Mm-hmm.
growing up. We repurposed clothing. My mom would cut clothing. We would buy clothing. She would cut it and resew it. And we were always repurposing things to kind of reimagine what they could look like. And so
Ooh.
this repurposing and creation of nothing or something out
Yeah.
of nothing is what I think when you're asking me about purpose, it's
Yeah.
showing people that they can do that.
What did your dad do?
He was an optometrist.
Okay.
He's
So
now
you've got this
retired.
right and left brain in the house, right?
Yes,
Like
very much.
total science and art. And you
Yep.
grow up now as this conglomeration of both of that and
Yeah.
show up as you are. And I love that, right? You go back to that. You're okay. So now it's this, okay, I was always this person. I love that. What you said, repurposing.
Mm-hmm.
You started with purpose and you're like, yeah, but it's almost like start with a purpose, but then Like the film canister obviously has this purpose. I'm going to carry film. And you're like, yeah, but what if it did something else? And then what if I took that other thing and sold that for my own thing? And well, if that's not going to work, then I'm going to repurpose who I like my ideas and do something else. So there's this constant, creating something from nothing, as you say. Of course, the entrepreneurship mindset starting off. And I've heard you talk about that before on other podcasts. It's like, that's where that began. But yeah, this idea of recreation or creating something from nothing continues on. And then what becomes like, what was this thing that you were driving towards? And you're like, look, this is what I can do. And leadership, I can step into that. What was this desire that you had back then? Like, what was the drive? What was the vision, the image, this is what I want in life?
I never had a vision of entrepreneurship. I didn't even know what entrepreneurship was. I didn't have a vision of teaching people. I never set out for this particular goal that I've now gotten to. What I've done was I've just focused on, if we're going back to the river, whatever rock is in front of me. And so if we go back, I actually went to college for my doctorate of physical therapy. So I stayed in that left science brain. And then I ended up going to fashion school for design. And then I was a phys ed teacher for 8 years and a personal trainer for 18 years, and then was an entrepreneur. So I've never had this long-term vision of this is what I'm going to go do and this is my purpose, but rather what lights me up in the moment, this next rock, is this exciting in my purpose? And how can I create and recreate this current moment to feel aligned? And I kind of have just been following that over and over, and it's unfolded as it has.
So at this point, the point that you're at now and the impact that you're making now of thinking this, I'm helping other people now step into their purpose, right? Like if that's the impact now, then what was the turning point? Like, what was the hinge moment? What was it? Was there a moment? Was it, again, it's a series of moments, obviously the next rock in front of you, but what do you look at as like, oh yeah, but this really, like I was going on a path and then this happened. And I mean, here I am, whether that was 4 months ago or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
What comes to mind?
I have a couple different ones that really stick out, but the first one is, it was October of 2016. I was working full-time as an elementary school teacher, and, part-time nights and weekends as a personal trainer. I had been 8 years working as a teacher, and I was driving to work, coffee in hand, listening to a podcast as always. And I was listening to this woman who was a teacher who also made jewelry and sold it on Etsy, which really resonated because I was making jewelry and clothing and selling it on Etsy as well. Yeah. And she was a teacher by day, and she wanted to leave her job to do the Etsy thing full time, but she was scared because of, summers and benefits and weekends and all these things. So the man interviewing her said, if you left your job and you tried to do Etsy full time for 1 year and it didn't work out, what would be the worst case scenario? So she said, I don't know, I'd probably just go back to teaching. I might have to go to a different district, but I've been a teacher for 10 years. And his answer changed my life. It was one of those moments. And he said, oh, how does it feel to wake up every day and live in your worst case scenario? And I pulled the car over. This is October 2016. I was bawling, crying. I texted my husband. I said, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. I know nothing. I can't do this. And let me be clear. Teaching in my elementary school in the beautiful town that I was in New Jersey was not my worst case scenario, but it wasn't my best. Right. And when I kind of reframed, like, wait a minute, actually, I could go do a million other things if I couldn't get my job back, then it wasn't as scary. So that winter break, I came back from school and I resigned. I walked into my principal's office with no plan, resigned. He very much disagreed with me and tried to encourage me to stay. And that was my last year teaching.
What's that conversation like? That's the interest, right? Where you're like, look, I've got this thing, I'm marching in, maybe I'm scared, maybe I'm nervous, I don't know, but you show up. Let's talk about the rooms that you enter into feeling confident, and you show up into this conversation with your principal. You said he very much tried to get me to stop. What was his argument?
He was very much like a father figure, about my dad's age, and he had kids my age, and he was just like, you're crazy. Like, did Mike get transferred at work? That was his initial thought. Like, do you have to move? Is this what's happening? And He actually offered to put me on sabbatical for a year to kind of give it a shot. He thought maybe I was having like a mental breakdown. And
Yeah.
I just had to, with all due respect, like you're not going to understand it. But what happened for me, and again, I love this visual. I worked in an elementary school, which if you haven't been in one recently, they're very small. So the toilets are very low to the ground and the desks are very small. And what I felt was happening for me was every year I was getting older and I was sort of shrinking and the room was getting smaller and kind of caving in on me. And my fifth graders would graduate and they would go off to grow up and grow on. And I just felt like I was getting smaller and more comfortable and more complacent. And that wasn't a life that I necessarily desired. There's nothing wrong with it. But for me, it was like, I can't breathe. I quit because I couldn't breathe, not because I was brave. Two very different things.
Come on.
I
quit because I couldn't breathe,
yeah,
not because I was brave. I just got this image of Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Come on. I knew it. Okay. So, right. So she eats the one thing and feels very small.
Yep.
And becomes very small. And the movie feels like they wrote it while they were on LSD, but like, but we find what we can in it. And there's a feeling of feeling very small, which we've talked about already in this conversation, entering a room and feeling very small. And you were like, yeah, but now I'm in a small place and I feel very big. Like it's almost like you were too big for where it was. And so that breathing, that space was constricting you. As you said, I couldn't breathe. Does that align?
Yeah,
Do you find yourself
100%.
in that story?
100%. And I said what I said about not being brave, because so often people will say to me like, oh, you're so brave. You had the courage. And I didn't quit to grow my wings on the way down. I didn't quit and have this faith and trust. I quit because I was so uncomfortable and unhappy in my life. And what happened for me was I felt like I was living in somebody else's story.
Yeah.
And I didn't write that story. And
where does that come from then? Because you've got, what did you say? You went to school you did all the things, you could do all the things, president, student council, all those things. And then you went to school for physio, and then you went into fashion and then fitness. Yeah. And then, so what are those leaps? What was like, on a surface level, what were the decisions to go from this to this, to this, to that? Like, what were any of those decision times like?
I decided to go to school for, you say physio in Canada, right? Physical therapy. When I was 7. That was a decision I made when I was 7, and I continued on that path until I did it. And I was in my first year of grad school getting my doctorate, and I was just wildly unhappy. And I left. And I left at the time I left for a leave of absence, but I never went back. So actually I quit. And that story lived with me for a really long time, that I was a quitter and that I was a failure. And in my house, aside from my mom, I come from a family of doctors, lawyers, and accountants. So I very much felt like a failure. And what was interesting was the way that I got into fashion was exactly how I teach business. So I had grown up, remember, making, repurposing clothing and making clothing and accessories with my mom. And so now I'm in my early 20s, just dropped out of my grad school program, and I was working at the gym and I was working as a trainer, kind of figuring out what I was going to do next. My parents had lovingly encouraged me to get a teaching degree to, quote, fall back on when I was an undergrad. So I had that teaching degree, I just didn't want to use it. And so I was trying to figure out what I was going to do, working at the gym and going out and bartending nights and weekends to make ends meet. And when I would bartend, I would wear my own jewelry, I'd wear my own accessories and my own clothing. And what happened very naturally is people would ask, where's that from? Oh my gosh, you made it, you should sell it. No. I don't sell it. I just make it for myself.
Yeah.
But the gym that I worked at said, why don't you set up a little booth? And for the holidays, see if you can sell some of your accessories. I'm like, all right, whatever, I'll do it. But I didn't have stock. I didn't have inventory. I had the 5 purses that I made and that I would wear. So I brought my 5 purses. I brought my mom, and we sat at this table in the lobby of the gym that I worked at for like 10 hours on one day. I said, if I sell one, then I'll go make it. We ended up selling $5,000 worth of orders that day. And we had to go
these
home.
Ones on display, and people are saying, I want one of those. And I'll come back.
Exactly. So I had prototypes. And so I went back and we went into the basement and we started just pumping. We started making these bags, and $5,000 worth of orders on like $100 purse, right? So do the math. We had a lot of orders. Yeah. And so at that moment I said, I'm going to go to fashion school. So that is why I actually went to fashion school. Now, the funny thing is, all these years later, this is exactly how I teach business.
Yeah.
You put out your prototype, and if people buy the prototype, if they buy the offer, if they buy into the idea of what you have, then you use the funding that they give you to go actually create it and to keep you motivated and to keep you on time with your deadlines, which is so funny because I didn't recognize that until probably last year.
So it's so good because there's this real mix that I'm hearing here, Jess, between passion and purpose.
Yeah.
There's this real careful balance that you've been walking. And as you say, you're like, I teach people to live in their purpose, not their passion, because passion can be wishy-washy. Passion can be what's hot in the moment. And from what I hear in your story so far is somebody who, as a 7-year-old, had this very clear purpose, this very clear plan of like, I want to do this. And you're like physical therapy.
Yeah.
I would just say, okay, even in that moment, going back to that, can you remember what was leading that?
Yeah.
What idea?
I was a competitive gymnast growing up. So I grew up in physical therapy. I've had multiple surgeries, every broken bone you can imagine. And so growing up in PT, like I literally was there 2-3 times a week my entire life. I just had this knack for understanding the body, but then also I want to help people. And I can help people in this way because at a very young age, I already knew, 10 years old, I had an electro stim machine at my house that I was putting myself, hooking myself up to. So it was that purpose of let me help people with something that I know that it's a lived experience.
Come on. That's it. There we go. I love it. Right. So you've got this like really early on idea of like, I'm going to help people with what I have. And then it sounds like all along the way over the next 25 years or so became like, okay, well, I'm going to do it this way. Now I'll do it in this way. Now I'll do it in this way. Now I'll do it in this way.
Because I kept following the passion.
Yes.
So as the passion jumped to fashion, I went to fashion and realized, oh, this is actually out of alignment and this isn't in purpose. So after a year, I basically was just 1 year in fashion. I then left. And then I went to the next passion and I did the fitness and then I did the teaching and I did the things. And so now that's probably why I'm so passionate about not having clients jump from the thing that you're passionate about. Because 1 month we want to learn guitar and the next month we're taking Spanish lessons.
Getting chills. It's just such a beautiful journey, really. Again, and it's no surprise to me that this is what you're doing, but there really is this for you. It sounds like there's this journey of going from passion to purpose. And so of course, now you step in and say, hey, business owner, let me help you because I've been through that and I've tried all the things. And yes, I could call myself an authority on many different subject matters. And here I am showing up in the same way that I did, when I first started in fashion, just trying something, see who responds to it and leaning into that and knowing that ultimately that's my purpose is to spread this out, to get this going further and further and further, to expand my purpose as you expand your purpose. Let me help you. And there's this amazing journey that you've been on. How does that feel?
You just unlocked, you make it sound so great. I'm like, thank you for the session. Invoice me later. But really, when you say it like that, it's wow. I haven't looked at it like that.
Well, this is the joy of it, right? This is what I find the most excitement about in this conversation is when we start to unlock that, you go like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing now, of course, because it's what I love to do. And then you tap back. And one of my favorite things that I ever hear, Jess, and I'm sure that you have it as well, when there's certain phrases that you hear when you're coaching people. I'd actually love to hear one. But for me, one of my favorite phrases that I hear when I'm coaching people through their story is, ooh, nobody's ever asked me that before. Or, ooh, I've never told anyone this before. So when you said that, I'm like, oh crap. Oh, we are finding something here. Like there's something new coming out. What is that for you? What's one of your favorite phrases that you hear when you're coaching people to, step into their purpose more? Is there something that you hear a lot of people say that really lights you up and makes you go, whoa, we're into something?
I think for me, one of the things, I apologize, there's dogs barking in the background. That is not my dog. One of the things oftentimes that I hear is that people will say things like, I've never heard it taught that way, or it makes
Yeah.
sense now. Like I've heard it before, but I've never understood it until now. And again, that's partially an ego stroke, but also that's my purpose. When people ask me my superpower, one of my
Yeah.
superpowers is taking difficult concepts and making them easy to digest. And I think that comes from
Yes.
a teacher. And so when someone says to me, like, it clicked, I've heard it before, but it just clicked, I'm like, yes, now we can get to the breakthrough.
And so is that some, why is that happening with you? You know what I mean? Like, is there some magic uh, uh, recipe that you have to see? How do you see things that help people just
Yeah.
click? How do you define that?
It's interesting. So it's the thing that's in my brain that I can extract and turn into a business. And this
Yeah.
is the thing that people don't understand. So I don't have an answer for you, but it's the way that I see things, it's the way that I hear things, and the way that I'm able to like maybe come up really quickly. And I say this in the most humbling way, but I can very
Yes.
quickly come up with an analogy, a metaphor, a different way to teach it. I understand the different types of learners, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
being a teacher, we have got auditory, kinesthetic, visual. So taking years and years of experience, it's just something that I'm innately good at.
Yeah.
It isn't necessarily something I learned in a book. It probably is layers and layers and layers of years of practice and
Yeah.
books and podcasts and classes, but it's the thing that I'm just good at
Yeah.
that I can then turn into a business. And so that's like literally what I help people do. It's like, what is the thing that you're just really good at breaking people's stories apart?
Yeah.
You are a pastor, it's years of experience, it's
Mm-hmm.
trial and error, it's making mistakes, it's feedback from people and taking classes and watching things and
Yep.
watching back your own stuff, but it's your superpower. So how can I help you pull that out and turn it into a business? Because what you think is just, well, that's just how I am, actually could help so many people.
Right. Exactly. And that's the turning point. That was the turning point for me. Again, right in that mastermind for us, where I was hiding this thing. I was like, yeah, this is just what I do. And then somebody said, you realize that like you can speak in a way that we can't speak. You need to teach us how to do that. And it's just somebody coming along and saying that and affirming that. Maybe it's a thought that you already had, but somebody coming along and doing that. And for you, right, it's this thing that you're just good at. And I would say, well, let's put a label on that, or let's put a moment on that. Let's put an influence on that and say it does come back to, it's not just I just innately am good at this, but it really came from, as you said, this practice of repurposing, this constant trial and error of, can I make something out of this? Can I do this? How will this go? Can I inspire that? Can I lead these people? Can I succeed here? What about here? I'll just try it and see what happens. But knowing all along there's this deeper purpose.
You know, it's so interesting. I'm trying to think right now, like, can I pinpoint a time in my life or a moment? And it really is coming back to gymnastics. When I was learning a routine and a coach would teach me choreography, the way that they teach it, kind of like dance, it's like an 8 count or like these particular steps, these 4 moves. And you take this block of 4 and you glue it to the next block of floor. And then you practice
Mm,
the 8. And once you've mastered the 8, you get to add 4 more on. And you do that over and over and over until you have the entire routine built out. And so at a really young age, I started learning this idea of like, let me understand these 4 things. And if I can't do the 4 back to back, let me actually reverse engineer, break it down, master 1. Then I'm going to glue
wow.
2 together, and then 3, and then 4. And it's this years. I mean, I was a highly competitive gymnast up until college. And so years of practicing routines in this way where we would actually break it down. Like there were days where we only did half routines, or there were
Yeah.
days where you just did the tumbling passes of your routines. And so I'm actually going to say that gymnastics just hugely impacted my life. It's what I wrote my
Yeah.
college entrance essay on, was actually gymnastics, but it taught me so many things: delayed gratification, competition, comparison, right? All of these different things. And I think there's this, what I have always called curriculum building, because I wrote
Yeah.
curriculums for our district.
Yeah.
And now, I do it on Post-it notes and I teach
Yeah.
people how to do it with
Exactly.
Post-it notes, right? But that's what it is. It's like,
Which
how
is
can we
taking
glue
the
pieces
big
together?
idea and breaking it
Exactly.
down into a post-it note. And now 4 post-it notes, and now 16 post-it notes. And now look at that. You've got an annual plan and a business idea. You've got your course blocked out. And we stutter, you would say, I think, because we're trying to see the whole routine.
Yeah. Well, it's beyond seeing the whole routine. We're trying to memorize the whole routine.
Gosh. And trying to perform that is making us not move at all.
Paralyzed. Yeah. Analysis paralysis, right? Because it's so big.
Uh-huh. So, okay. Oh my goodness, it's brilliant. You're just full, you've just got so much to give all the time. Every conversation is just such gold. And
it's a reflection of you leading us there. So thank you.
Gosh, I'll receive that. um Tell me about, as we'll kind of land the plane here, and as on our descent, tell me about this idea of experts and three experts. And I know that you've talked about, right, helping someone see what they're an expert at and what they can teach others. And I know that you've got a theory, an idea around this of different types of experts. And I think that'll be really helpful for us as we consider, what can I be an expert? Or I've even talked about, you're not an expert, you're an authority. So maybe we can challenge that a little bit, but we'll see. I want to hear where you're at with this and seeing what you're an expert in and how to break that down a bit.
Yeah. So I apologize for these dogs. I am not
They're
an
just
expert
in they're just in the podcast.
They have stuff to say, you know. It's my neighbors. They're just going crazy. You know, RV life was way easier. Okay, so oftentimes people will hesitate to start anything because they don't think they're an expert. So I'm not an expert. I'm not good enough. I don't have enough authority or credibility.
Yeah.
And so the concept of the 3 R's behind what type of expert you are is just to kind of lay the framework for the fact that we're all experts in our own right at any given moment in many different areas. So the first one is going to be a research expert. So a research expert is the point in your life where you're researching something, you're looking into something, you're going to start taking these new classes, you're going to start learning how to garden. And now you're reading books and podcasts and maybe taking courses. And so you're researching how to become better at this particular task or knowledge or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
A research expert is able to say to their audience, hey, look at this thing that I'm learning about. Right. So even for me, I'm finally, after 7 years, starting my own podcast in 2022, which I'm super excited about.
Love it.
But as I go through the process of doing it, I've never done it before. I get to also be a research expert and share with my audience along the way. Look at what I'm learning. Look at what not to do. So that's a research expert. We're all research experts.
Yep.
The second one is a role model expert. So this is really that next piece that I was just saying. As I start to share what I'm learning, I become a role model. Look at what she's doing. She's starting her own podcast. This is so inspirational. I feel so motivated. I bet I could do it too. Yeah. Right. So now I become the role model expert where I'm like, look at me, come with me, let me show you. Oftentimes in a particular area, we'll actually go from a research expert to a role model expert.
Yeah.
You also can be a research in one area and a role model in a different area, depending on how far you are in your journey. And then eventually,
I can see the Venn diagram forming, right? Now. Yeah, this is
boom, boom, boom. There it is. Yep. And then eventually, in a particular area, you might become the results expert. So the results expert is the person who's sitting saying, I've done it. Look at the results. Look at the transformation my clients have had. I've mastered the thing. I am what we think of as an expert in quotes.
Yeah.
I've arrived. That's the results expert. Now we think sometimes that we need to be a results expert before we can start sharing.
Yeah.
It's like we think we need to make money before we can start a business. We think we need more followers before we can make an impact.
Yeah.
And there's really just kind of excuses. So we often do move from research expert through role model expert into results expert, and you can be all 3 at the same exact time.
It's really interesting to me. And as I think about the story arc and how I coach people through that, it sounds to me like it lands really comfortably within that role model expert framework that you're saying, or that category that, right. I'm helping people, what you just did here, right. To see your story and say, look, this is my story. I went from following my passion to following my purpose, and I can help you do the same as I'm doing. So there's this and that's why I would say you're not an expert yet, because a lot of people get hung up on that. I'm like, expert means certifications, means results, means all these things. but you are an authority on the journey that you've been through. And so show up as that role model and proclaim it proudly.
Yeah, I love that. And I don't disagree, because I think the word expert has this heaviness to it where people
Yeah.
think that you're done, like
Yeah.
you've gotten to the end of it. And that's actually not the case. It's kind of thinking, like we talked about, to circle all the way back, of leadership, where my journey as a leader is only as far as my journey is as a student.
Mm-hmm.
My business will only grow to the extent that I continue to grow. So I'm not an expert because I've arrived. I'm an expert because I continue to learn and share. And that's vulnerability, which is a whole different topic. But I think that word even gets thrown around, where people think, be vulnerable, be authentic. And it means we have to share our deep, dark secrets and skeletons in the closet, when that's not actually what it means.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Oh shoot. What did Brene Brown say about vulnerability? If shoot, there's something. This is gonna. Oh, it's such gold about airing your
Being
dirty
able to
laundry.
not remember your words on your podcast. It must have been something like that.
That would be the one. Yeah, she says something really good about that. But you just said, I'm not an expert because I have nothing left to learn. I'm an expert because I'm still learning, and that is, that's the place that we need to recognize we're at. And for those that are looking up to you as their leader, to recognize, as leading us on this journey, to recognize that you are only here because you are continually learning. I actually have a phrase that I will often open up a talk with, whether, like, when I'm talking, I'm on stage somewhere, or I'm leading my own talk, that I would say, I used to think blank, but now I'm learning blank. And it's so critical that second part is in it, but now I'm learning, because it's what it does. To put it up at the beginning of a talk, it's this diffusion, it's a connection statement to say, look, I'm with you in this. I'm in the river with you, because I used to think this thing that we all think, but now I'm learning this thing. And as I learn, I'm here to bring you along with what I'm learning. And it's this beautiful statement of inclusivity, of togetherness. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about there, is this idea of an expert doesn't set you apart, but we get to view expert as being along the ride with the person. And
you just put such a bow on it. Like, and again, the visual of the river, it's like, I used to think that I had to jump to the farthest rock until I fell in and my feet got wet. And now I'm learning that I can actually step on close rocks and get farther. Right.
Right. So now everybody that hears that says, like, yeah, I currently think what you used to think.
Yeah.
And if you're learning something, well, that sounds like where I want to be. So I'm going to follow you through the river. Gosh.
When are we going camping? Let's go. I want to be in the river with you.
Let's get it done. This is fabulous. Okay. Well, we've hit everything. We've unlocked, opened up your story. And I'm so grateful for how you dove into this, how you just create such an easy conversation back and forth, how we've put up with the dogs next door. And you've been so gracious with your time here. I know that you're working on new things, and you want to share stuff with us. So what have you got for us? How can we find out more and work with you?
Yeah. So this episode, when it comes out, this is the first time I'm saying it out loud, I will have a new Instagram page, and it's a completely new name with a completely different undertone. Same purpose, different undertone. So I would say follow me on the new Instagram page, which I'm sweating now saying that. Because I haven't actually started it yet. So I'm committing to that. And you can follow me over there. Yeah, that is at I am Jessica DeRose.
Wow.
It is a change.
There we go.
It is a change. It's a completely different layer. But what I'd love to gift your audience, which I think would be super helpful, just in the way that we were speaking about all the different visuals of the river and chunking things down and making difficult concepts easy to understand. And we talked a little bit about the Post-it notes. I have a free training that I actually do where I can help you take your crazy, stupid idea and potentially turn it into something. And so I'd love to gift that training to your audience. And that's at
Brilliant.
jessglazer.com/post it to profit free. And we'll
And
give
that's
you
all one word.
that.
Post it to profit free.
Yep. Yep.
jessglazer.com/post it to profit free. And you get this brilliant course on how to learn a gymnastics routine. To break down your big crazy idea into something that's tangible and practical and step by step. I love it. You are the absolute master at that, and I've learned so much from you over these last couple of years. I'm so grateful for our friendship and that we continue to be in this river together. I'm excited for this new journey that you're going on, and excited for you stepping into your purpose even more. Thank you so much,
Alex. Thank you so much.